This week's Torah portion is the second Torah reading in the book of Genesis, and it's called Parshat Noach. And we read in it the famous story of Noah and the ark and the flood. We also read in it about the Tower of Babel, and we read at the end about the birth of Abraham. So I want to focus on the story of Noach. And Noach is described in the very beginning as a righteous man. He's described as perfect in his generation, and he's described as somebody who walked with God, hand in hand. God tells him, there's going to be a flood. I'm going to destroy the whole world because the world is corrupt. The world is filled with people who are thieves, who rob from each other, who are excessive in their lust and their desire and their selfishness, and it's just not sustainable. It's not a world that can continue, and there's going to be a flood. So he tells Noach, build an ark, and he tells him exactly how to build it, the exact specifications. And it takes Noach 120 years to build this ark. And he built it exactly as God tells him. He has complete faith in God at that point. That's demonstrated by him following the directions. People come up to him and say, what are you doing? And he tells them, I'm building an ark because God's going to bring a flood and he's going to destroy the world. What Noach doesn't do is he doesn't pray for the people. He doesn't argue with God. He doesn't say to God, don't destroy the people. He doesn't go to the people and ask them to repent and to change their ways. He doesn't do that. He does what God tells him to do, yes, and his name reflects his essence. Noach means calm, peaceful, like somebody who is calmly going about his business, doesn't get angry, doesn't get riled up, but is doing his job, and his job is to build this ark, and God tells him to build the ark, and he's going to bring all the animals. We read about this. The pairs of animals are going to come into the ark, and he's going to bring his wife, and he's going to bring his sons, and he's going to bring his daughter-in-laws, and they're going to go into the ark. And what happens is the rains start to come, but he doesn't get in right away. And the commentators teach us that perhaps this is a little lack of the faith that Noach had, that maybe the flood wasn't going to come. Maybe God would change his mind, so to speak. Maybe there wasn't going to be a destruction of the world. And so Noach doesn't go in right away. He waits and he's not sure until the waters, it says, reaches his ankles, and then he gets in. So there's a question: how faithful is Noach in when the rains start to come, that he doesn't go in right away. So the people, he doesn't fight for the people. He doesn't argue with God about the people. And later we read about Abraham. Abraham's a man who does fight for the people. And later we read about Moses, who also fights the people. So Noach is righteous in his generation. He does what God tells him to do, but he doesn't go above and beyond. He doesn't argue with God. Later Abraham does, Moses does, other people in the Torah fight with God and argue with God, but Noach doesn't, and he's considered to be righteous and walking with God, but he doesn't go above and beyond. He doesn't use his words to pray for the people. He doesn't use his words to change the generation that is corrupt, that is filled with thievery. He doesn't do that. There's a really lovely parable given as to how to understand the difference between Noach and Abraham. So let's say you're in a place where it's very, very cold. So Noach would be the man who would get a fur coat and he'd put it on himself. He would put his coat on himself to keep himself warm. But Abraham would be the man who would light fires or turn on the heat and make it warm for everybody else, like take care of other people. When I was growing up, my parents were very strict with us that if we were sitting with other people at the table and we wanted a glass of water, we wouldn't pour for ourselves first and put the jug back on the table. We would ask, does anybody else want some water? And we'd pour for other people first before we pour for ourselves. And I think that's the modern day equivalent, in the sense that, like, take care of other people. Make sure that you have a knowledge and an understanding and a thought process that thinks about other people. Noach did what God told him, yes, but he didn't go above and beyond. He didn't turn up the heat for other people. He didn't reach out and try to change people. And yes, the flood's going to come. And we read later, say our commentators, that when he comes out of the ark and the world's completely be destroyed, he starts to cry. And God says to him, why weren't you crying in the beginning? Why didn't you cry before I brought the flood? And he doesn't. He does exactly what God tells him, and eventually he gets into the ark and he goes in there with all his animals and with his family, and it says they go in as individuals. So now, for a whole year, It takes a whole year for the waters to recede. We learn it's 40 days and 40 nights of rain, and then another until a whole year until the waters recede and Noach and the animals can come out of the ark. But for a whole year they're in the ark. And that whole year is spent taking care of the animals, looking after them, feeding them, watering them, cleaning them, taking away their muck, doing everything that needed to do to take care of an ark load, a huge ark load of animals and birds and insects and every living creature, not the fish obviously, but every other living creature that was on the ark, every peasant, he had to take care of them all. And so Noach and his family are taught day in, day out to be tireless givers, to do tirelessly for the animals and take care of them. And they also learn to work as a family. They're individuals coming in, but they become a family. And it says at the end, when they come out of the ark, they come out as families. The animals are families. The people are families. They've learnt to create community. They've learnt to understand each other and work together and appreciate each other perhaps, and to be a family when they come out. And they're described as individuals going in and a family coming out. And I wonder if that isn't a little bit similar to some of the things that some people have experienced during COVID, where perhaps their growth that were in universities or wherever they were came home, and we had to reconfigure and learn how to be a family in a different way than we otherwise would. As our young adults are leaving and they're coming back home, we learn to be a family again. And hopefully they went off as an individual but came home, and now they're going back out, and there's a greater sense of the family unit, perhaps. But that might be a way to think about what was happening in the ark. What is the ark? The ark is a place of refuge. It's a place to change, a place to purify oneself, a place to atone for things, a place to come together, a place devoid of the outside world. They had to hunker in and be in that place and learn how to be in that place. And we think we all did that. So that's the ark. The word teva, which is the Hebrew word for ark, means a word. And it could also be that we use as our refuge our words, the words of prayer, the words of Torah, the words of truth are a place of refuge, that we can transcend our reality through our words, through our thoughts, through our learning, through our seeking something bigger than ourselves. And so teva as a word, as a place of refuge. There are other places of refuge, like a refuge in time, like the Shabbat, or other places. But the idea that the teva, that this place is a place of refuge, a place to go, a place to re-begin. And this 40 days and 40 nights of rain, that there's 40, that 40 number 40 is huge in our sources, in our tradition. That 40 is a number of re-beginning, of rebirth. A fetus, baby, takes 40 weeks to gestate, to go from an egg and an embryo and an egg all the way to a newborn baby. 40 weeks, right? 40 days of rain to rebirth the world. We're going to go to a new world. We're going to start all over again. 40 years in the desert that the Jewish people traveled from slavery to freedom to become a new entity that was going to enter into the promised land, a new beginning. The 40 units of water that are in a mikveh to transition, you use a mikveh to transition from one state of being to another state of being. You're going to change and be reborn. This number 40 is very big. And so it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and the whole world was covered with this water. Right back to how it was at the beginning of Genesis, when the world was just water. There was nothing but water. And then there's divisions of different things of the land and the water and the skies and the heavens and the earth, so on and so on. But we go back to a beginning. We go back to just an expanse of water and this ark. And this ark lands eventually after a whole year. And Noah and his family come out. And God says to Noah, you have to make the animals, order the animals off the teva, off the ark. They're not leaving. It's not like when an aeroplane lands and everybody jumps out of their seats and runs for the door and you're elbowing each other to get out of the airplane. You can't wait to get off that airplane. not the experience of the animals on the ark. They were very happy there. They were taken care of. All their needs were met. And they got used to living there. And God says in the Torah to Adam, you have to order the animals off. They have to be forced off. They're not going to go of their own volition. They're not going to leave. You have to make them. You have to push them off. You have to order them off. And they're going to come off and they're going to go into this new world and they're going to populate the world and we're going to start all over again. And I wonder if that isn't also a lesson for us. Sometimes we're in our happy place, we're in our safe place, we feel like we have everything we need, but maybe we don't. And maybe on the other side of that door, maybe outside of our complacency, there's the potential for growth and there's the potential for more. And sometimes we have to be pushed out into a new reality in order to learn who we are and to bring more of ourselves out, that we can stay in this complacent place and it feels fine. But yet there's more, and there's greater growth to be had if we would go outside of our comfort zone. And perhaps that's one of the lessons we can learn from God telling Noach to order the animals off. They have to leave. They have to be forced off the ark because that's not where they're going to stay. They have to go and populate the world. So there's a little snippet of some of the lessons I want to bring out from the Parsha. Specifically Noach, who was a righteous man. He was a perfect in his generation. He walked with God. He did what God told him to do, but he didn't fight for the people. He didn't pray for the people. He didn't reach out and try to advocate for them. He didn't do that. And later Abraham does. And actually what's fascinating is that Noach is 600 years old when he gets into the ark. He's 601 when he comes out of the ark, and he doesn't die until he's 950. And there's 10 generations from Noach until Abraham, which we read about at the end of this week's Torah portion. And Abraham and Noach overlap and live for 58 years together. So for the last 58 years of Noach's life, Abraham is in the world. So he's got that influence also. So Abraham is the next story that the next patriarch, obviously, that we're gonna read about, descended from Noach, 10 generations. That Abraham is a man who fights for other people, fights for the Jewish people, brings people in, has an open tent versus a closed ark. So those are some of the lessons that I learned from Parshat Noach. That Noach took care of himself, took care of his family. In the ark, he learns the muscle of giving consistently and tirelessly. He's giving to the animals, forced off the ark, forced out of a place of complacency into a place where we can grow and be. And now we'll transition next week to reading more about Abraham.